What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Legitical Response. We cover political news. We keep you up to date and keep you informed with everything that the government does. Now, the absolute insanity we have going on in this country right now is blowing my mind constantly. I know I said I was going to stop saying that, but I can't stop saying blowing my mind because my mind continually gets blown all the time. Look at all the protests that we have going on college campuses. These people are actually on the side of Hamas, and they are cheering and screaming, "Go Hamas, kill all the Jews. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." That is a call for genocide, y'all. And now the Congress, Mike Johnson, for God's sakes, has went to New York, went to Columbia, and said, we're going to send in the National Guard if you guys don't straighten yourselves up. Right? Like, all the crap that's going on in this country. The open borders. I ain't doing nothing about that. Could care less about that. We're in economic decline, right? Like, you go to the grocery store and you start crying, essentially, when you go to the grocery store. You go to the gas pump and you get punched in the face by the gas pump. You're like, holy crap, I can't afford gas anymore. It's just getting outright ridiculous. And these people are over here spending $1.7 trillion in a deficit. It blows your freaking mind, right? Like, it seems like there's no accountability whatsoever with Congress, with the executive branch, with any of these people. The DOJ has been absolutely weaponized against the American people, unless you're a Democrat. Right? If you're a Democrat, everything's all good. They are just taking insanity and saying, this is the new norm now. We're just going to be insane, and that's all. That's it. We're done. Right? Like, the country is seriously in a bad place right now, and nobody seems to be standing up and fighting and pushing back, at least in our government, right? Like, we have patriots out there that are actually voicing their opinion, saying stuff needs to change, right? But we need to vote with our feet. We need to get rid of some of these people in Congress. Some of these people that vote for this Ukraine bill, we need to get rid of those people. Some of these people that vote to send money to Israel, we need to get rid of those people. Some of these people that continually, day after day after day, get up on national TV and lie to the American people and promote abortions, for God's sakes. You know, this whole abortion thing is being blown way out of proportion. Like, it doesn't really affect that many people. But they are blowing this thing way out of proportion. They're blowing everything way out of proportion, right? Like, and if you're not on the side of Ukraine, apparently you're a Putin puppet. Like, take me, for instance, right? Like, I don't want to fund war. I would love it nothing better than Ukraine to kick Putin out of its territory, right? That would be great. Do I want to fund that? Absolutely not. Don't want to fund that whatsoever. I would love it nothing more if there was some sort of regime change in Russia and Putin was booted out, right? Some sort of revolution, whatever. That would make me very happy. Right? Like, I think Putin is an evil dictator. But do I want to give billions of dollars to another country to fight Russian soldiers? No. I take no hard feeling toward Russians, right? Like, my issue is with Putin. But the soldiers that Putin is forcing to fight, no, I don't take issue with those people whatsoever. It's like, that's one of the main reasons why I don't want them to continually fund war, right? Like, we got Ukrainian citizens, soldiers, dying in this war, and they didn't ask for this war. They didn't ask for Putin to invade, right? They're not asking for all this stuff, but they're forced to fight. They're forced to defend their country, and I think that's a travesty that none of our leaders are trying to stop that war. Right? But I think I've ran it on for long enough because I was trying to lead up into we might actually get some accountability. We might get some accountability, y'all. Check this out. Fauci to testify before Congress for the first time since stepping down. Holy crap. Here we go. He's no longer immune from prosecution, right? Like, he had some sort of he had a little bit of immunity, right? Like, he could have been kicked out, but for the most part, he goes and testifies in front of Congress, and he lied through his freaking teeth to Congress. Nothing happened, right? Like, he pretty much did what he wanted to do, and nothing happened. He lied to the American people. He lied to a lot of people, and nothing happened. Where's the accountability for Fauci, right? Like, we know Fauci lied about a lot of stuff, and we might just get some accountability, y'all. At least the investigations that the Republicans are doing, which is the only thing that the Republicans are accomplishing right now, because they certainly aren't being fiscally conservative. They certainly aren't being conservative in any sort of way, right? Like, the only good thing they're doing, the only good thing is their investigations. And that's about it. Everything else is just insane, out there, establishment machine instructions. That's all it seems to be. Because how the hell can any sane person vote to spend in a $1.7 trillion deficit? I have no idea. But let's get into it, y'all. Anthony Fauci, former chief medical advisor to President Biden and Trump, will testify before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic on June 3rd, making it the first time he will appear before a congressional panel since leaving government work at the end of 2022. Subcommittee Chair Brad Wenstrup announced the hearing Wednesday. Fauci had committed to testify late last year, along with agreeing to 2 days of interviews which took place in January. The closed-door interviews focused on gain-of-function research, alleged federal records violations, conflicts of interest, and confusions around pandemic guidance. Fauci was joined by 2 attorneys during the entire course of the interviews. During Dr. Fauci's closed-door interview in January, he testified to serious systemic failures in our public health system that deserve further investigation, including his testimony that the 6 feet apart social distancing guidance, which was used to shut down small businesses and schools across America, sort of just appeared, Wenstrup said in a statement. Yeah, that sort of just appeared, and that was the rule of the land. People went outright insane on other people if they weren't socially distanced, right? Like, we saw that even with the masks, right? Like, we were getting conflicting stories from the government, from the NIH, conflicting stories about masks, right? Like, oh, they don't work. Oh, no, they do work. No, wear 2 masks. No, wear 3 masks. No, don't wear this type of mask. Wear this type of mask. And it was like, okay, so what do we do here? Right? And other people went absolutely insane. If you walked into a store, there were several viral videos. If you walked into a freaking store, right? Like, these nut jobs just went off on you if you didn't have a mask on, right? Like, I never wore a mask. I got yelled at a few times, and I told people to f*** off. But, that was my prerogative. People around here weren't that insane. As the face of America's public health response to COVID-19 pandemic, these statements raise serious questions that warrant public scrutiny, and I totally agree with that. Ranking Member Paul Rees said he appreciated Dr. Fauci's willingness to testify voluntarily in June, which will allow the American public to evaluate for themselves the result of the majority's extreme fishing expedition when reached for comment by The Hill. Oh, God. Like I said, the Democrats are insane, right? Like, we've never had accountability on where the virus came from. Nobody seems to care about the origins of the pandemic, right? Like, that should have been the number one priority, right? After, the vaccine and all that shit, after the pandemic calmed down. That should have been the number one priority, figuring out where this came from so we can attempt to hold the people responsible accountable, right? Because we know, pretty sure, it didn't come from nature, right? Like, we figured that out. It took a while, but we finally figured that out. Going against the mainstream narrative on that one, because, oh no, if you thought it came from a lab, you were a crazy conspiracy theorist, right? Like, you were shunned out of society if you thought that. It's just, people were outright insane on that one. Dr. Fauci is a dedicated public servant who stepped up for our nation during the darkest days of the COVID-19 pandemic. But for 14 months, the Republican majority has dedicated time and taxpayer dollars to a politically motivated probe to vilify him, said Rees, calling on the majority in the subcommittee to release the transcripts from the January meeting. Yeah, I wish they would. Nearly 500,000 pages of documents and more than a dozen transcribed interviews with current and former federal public health officials and researchers, including 14 hours of testimony from Dr. Fauci himself, have failed to uncover any evidence that he sought to cover up the pandemic's origins or suppress the lab leak theory. Oh my God, are you freaking serious, dude? No evidence? Seriously?
January 31st, 2020 at 10:32 p.m., Dr. Fauci gets an email from Christian Anderson. Christian Anderson's a British researcher who's received numerous grants from NIH. Two really important sentences are in that email. Two sentences that get Dr. Fauci's attention. The first is this: the unusual features of the virus make up a really small part of the genome. So one has to look really closely at all the sequences to see that some of the features look engineered. Again, this is January 31st, 2020. Second sentence: Eddie, Bob, Mike, and myself all find the genome inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory. Email arrives 10:32 to Dr. Fauci on January 31st, 2020. 2 hours later at 12:29 in the morning, Dr. Fauci sends an email to his top deputy, Mr. Hugh Auchincloss. Guys worked for Fauci for 15 years, part of his inner circle. Sends it, subject line says important in all capital letters. He attaches a paper on gain-of-function research written by Dr. Baric and Dr. Shi. Dr. Shi, of course, is the so-called Bat Lady, Batwoman, the lady who does research in the Wuhan, China lab. This email, Dr. Fauci says, again, to his top deputy, it is essential that we speak this AM. Keep your cell phone on, read this paper. You will have tasks to do today that must be done. Notice the intensity. Notice the focus. I mean, this is the house is on fire email here. Now, 2 hours after that, at 2:48 in the morning, Dr. Fauci's busy this morning. 12:29, that email he sent to Dr. Auchincloss, his top deputy. 2 hours later at 2:48 in the morning, he sends another email, this one to Robert Kadlec, Assistant HHS Secretary, Trump appointee, not part of his inner circle, and he attaches a different article to this email, one that says the virus came from an animal, that downplays any lab leak theory. Now, again, notice the tone of this one. Bob, this just came out today. Gives a balanced view, best, Tony. I mean, totally different from the previous. This is one like, oh, if you get a chance, read this, gives a balanced view. So the tone is different, but also that sentence, gives a balanced view, it's not true either. That's just not accurate. This article downplays, as I said, the lab leak theory, emphasizes evolutionary cause to the virus. What happens next? What happens next? Later that same morning at 11:47 a.m., Dr. Fauci's deputy gets back to him. I just want to read you this whole email. The paper you sent me, the one he sent him on that was written by the virologist from Wuhan, China, and Dr. Baric, the paper you sent me says the experiments were performed before the gain-of-function pause, but have since been reviewed and approved by NIH. Not sure what that means, since Emily, someone else who works for Dr. Fauci, is sure that no coronavirus work has gone through the P3 framework, which, of course, is the oversight body that's supposed to approve any grant dollars going for gain-of-function research. No coronavirus work has gone through the P3 framework. Final sentence, she will try to determine if we have any distant ties to this work abroad. She will try to determine if our fingerprints are on any of this.
Yeah, I would say that's substantial evidence. That is almost a smoking gun, if you ask me, right? Like, we know that. We've been knowing this information. So how the hell can this guy get on television or talk to the corporate press and say there's no evidence whatsoever to show that he suppressed the lab leak theory? No evidence. That's what he said. 14 hours of testimony, there's no evidence. Yeah, there's a lot of emails from Dr. Fauci to other people. Yeah, that's almost a smoking gun right there, folks. In case y'all haven't noticed that, yes, this probably came from a lab. It probably came from the COVID-19 pandemic lab, right? Like they were studying this exact virus in a lab just up the street from where the virus supposedly started, right? Like ground zero for COVID-19. Oh, there just so happens to be a lab researching that type of virus, and gain of function research at that, to make it more transmissible to humans. Why would we not think it's from a lab leak theory, right? Like we're supposed to just believe that it came from a penguin.
What do you mean by that? Do you mean like perhaps there's a chance that this was created in a lab? There's an investigation.
A chance?
Well, but
oh my
if there was
God.
evidence, I'd love to hear it.
There's
I just don't know.
a novel respiratory coronavirus overtaking Wuhan, China. What do we do? Oh, you know who we could ask? The Wuhan Novel Respiratory Coronavirus Lab. The disease is the same name as the lab. That's just a little too weird, don't you think? And then they ask the scientists, they're like, how did this, so wait a minute, you work at the Wuhan Respiratory Coronavirus Lab. How did this happen? And they're like, a pangolin kissed a turtle. And you're like, no, the name of your lab, if you look at the name, let me see your business card. Show me your business card. Oh, I work at the coronavirus lab in Wuhan. Oh, because there's a coronavirus loose in Wuhan. How did that happen? Maybe a bat flew into the cloaca of a turkey and then it sneezed into my chili and now we all have coronavirus. Like, come on.
Wait a second.
What about this? What about this? Listen to this.
Wait a second.
All right.
John.
Oh my God. There's been an outbreak of chocolatey goodness near Hershey, Pennsylvania. What do you think happened? Like, oh, I don't know. Maybe a steam shovel mated with a cocoa bean. Or it's the chocolate factory. Maybe that's it.
That could be. That could be.
But you got to watch out because the corporate press is actually propping this up. Yes. Yeah, sure. It's not the corporate press actually saying this, but they chose to publish that lie. So they are culpable for that as well. And that's what I'm here to point out, Jalen. All that is known regarding what was discussed during the interviews is what members have relayed to reporters. Lawmakers said the longtime government scientist provided a great deal of clarification during the meeting, though Winstrup and Fauci claimed he did not recall details about the pandemic numerous times during the interview. Winstrup said a transcript of the meeting would be released prior to the June hearing, and I really, really hope we get that. I would like to hear his answers. I'm definitely going to watch that committee hearing. I'm going to be all the way up into that committee hearing, to be honest, because yeah, I want to see some accountability here. I really want to know what happened. I want them to figure out where this virus came from. And, let's hold China accountable for this. Do y'all agree with that? Let me know down in the comments section if we should actually hold China accountable for this, or at least try to, right? Like, we do have certain tools or whatever that we can actually put pressure on China about this, right? Like, we've got the UN. We can put pressure on China to at least own up to their mistake, at the very least. In my honest opinion, if it is found out that it was done like this, I think that the government's responsible for that, which would include the United States government, because we were funding this research, should be held to account and pay reparations for that. Because, to be honest with you, it's an untold number of damages to this, right? Like, some businesses closed down forever. There's no way we could ever figure out how to actually repay some of the damages from this, right? Like how are we going to bring back the dead people? As a matter of fact, you can't, right? Like, it's just that there's so much here that we need to get to the bottom of, and I'm so glad that the Republicans are wasting our time on this, right? Like, quote unquote, wasting our time, wasting taxpayer dollars to figure out where the origins of the pandemic came from. That's what Democrats are telling you. The Democrats are saying that it's a waste of time to figure all this stuff out, right? Like, is it like, or is that just insane yeah, to me, that's insane. I think we need to figure this stuff out. Let me know what you think. That's all I got for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. And y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.